Imagine running the entire travel product organization for a company with over 85% share of global online search. Well, our next speaker does just that. From a Princeton history degree to a combined Stanford JD MBA to over 16 years in the hallowed halls of Mountain View, his career path has been absolutely fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Google's Vice President, Product Management, Mr. Richard Holden.
Cool.
Hello, Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
It's great. I can't imagine what it's like. I think you said there's about 100 employees that have been there. You're of a group that's been at Google the longest, about 100.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Left still in the company as to when before I
What's that like being one of the originals at a company like Google? My goodness.
I mean, it's still a stimulating, great place to work, which is why there are so many people that were there early on are still there. In many ways, yes, it's a big company now, but we still talk about product in the same way we always did, frankly.
Yeah. One of my favorite topics, having run Phocuswright and sitting on a lot of travel, e-commerce, m-commerce companies, is product, which you own travel product at Google. And in many, many, many travel organizations around the world, especially intermediaries, they still use the word product to refer to supply and inventory.
Yep.
And I'm always the one saying that's not a good idea. That should be supplier organization. So how important do you think, like when I push that, how important do you think that is for an intermediary in today's travel industry to have a separate and equal discipline for product than from supply?
I mean, I think it's generally important in any of these businesses in this space as a whole. Our philosophy about product has always been that the product manager is sort of at the hub of a spoke system about building a product. We used to sometimes talk about it as sort of a mini CEO. And we always viewed product development from a standpoint of a pairing of an engineering pair and a product lead together, getting in a room with a small group and building a product from there.
Product at the center of a wheel is very different than, I don't have somebody that owns product. So do you or the other one is, Philip, shut up, it's too confusing, that's not the way we call things around here. And can an organization like that really compete and sustain competition if they don't have a strong product discipline?
Well, I'm biased because I sit in product, but yeah, I think that's necessary for building good products at the end of the day.
You weren't always in product though, were you?
No, well, I've always been in product at Google, actually, since I joined. But.
Yeah.
And actually, all my time in tech, it's been product-oriented. That's why I got into tech.
How in the world at Google? Oh, so let the audience understand. So, how many travel product folk are there in Google in the world?
Well, we don't usually say specifically, but hundreds. We have people in Zurich, people in Boston, and people in Mountain View, California.
And every day, as a travel product person, they do what, generally speaking, before we get into detail?
Every day. I spend most of my day in meetings, like most people these days. Most of my time is spent on one-on-ones with product managers or eng leads, and then also in product reviews, where we're just going through the product, how's it working, what do we need to change about the product, debating the features of the product.
And how do you generate new ideas, new hypotheses to test? How do the travel product people do that?
It's a combination. It's, as I say, it's sort of an eng lead and a product lead together coming up with what we want to test next. Ever since, I would say, about 2011, that duopoly of partnering there has become a triumvirate in the company. There's a UX pairing, a user experience pairing with that very closely. We spent a lot of time doing research in market with the UX team, trying to understand what features we need to build. In travel, we spent a lot of time talking to partners, asking them what's missing in the product, and then we're experimenting with features that they're suggesting for the product too.
And obviously analyzing every click and
lots of analysis.
Broken. Yeah. And what about generating incremental improvements, even so small you might not notice, versus big new ideas? Are those different people that do that, or how does that get?
No, same sets of people, but often you do get caught in this ongoing pace of just doing incremental changes, and sometimes you step back and say, what do we need to do new? We did that recently this year with rolling out our new hotel search offering, which was a revamped back end and front end together.
Some companies say, oh yeah, we're really big on A/B testing, test, test, improve conversion, test, test, but you need something worth testing. So how's that discipline separated? Like, how do you know what's the process to get to a point where there's something your team believes is worth testing from an A/B perspective?
It's often based partly on research, partly based on gut, partly based on partner and consumer input. And then we run a lot of experiments. A lot of them don't go anywhere and aren't valuable at the end of the day, but that's why we run a lot of them, because some of them do prove successful.
And these experiments are A/B tests? They're
typically,
yeah. How many different versions of different, like, hotel search or flight search are there at any one time?
It's hard to say because it may not be the whole product that's being tested, it's elements of it. So there are lots of tests across the team that are happening at any one product in flight search, hotel search. In any one moment, there's multiple tests in flight. And then there might be different versions in different countries.
And what about when a new product is launched, significant enough that a revenue stream is upended, like because it's not there anymore or it's not as prominent anymore? Do product people worry about monetization, or is that somebody else's dilemma?
No, we think about it holistically, but I would say that we focus always on build the right consumer experience, and then we'll figure out how to do the monetization at the end of the day. We don't use this phrasing very much anymore, but Larry and Sergey and Eric Schmidt, when they ran the company together, would always talk about, let's book it to quality. And what they were saying in those meetings typically is, build the right thing from a quality, from a user perspective. We'll worry about the monetization later.
Right.
And if we do that effectively, we'll be able to monetize well.
I'm not going to poll the audience right now, but a lot of companies I know work with don't do it that way because they don't have the guts to change something that's generating revenue and then say, we'll go figure out where the revenue comes later. But I think what you're saying is that could thwart improving the customer experience.
Certainly can, yeah.
So generally, your team doesn't worry about if a monetization process has to be refigured out or changed.
Well, we worry about it because we're trying to figure out what the next iteration may be. But foremost, we're asking what's the right consumer product to build. We think we'll be able to monetize it then.
And which team at Google picks up on new product and really focuses on monetization?
We do on the development side, but we work very closely with the sales organization that's responsible for ultimately selling the product. But we work in close partnership. There's teams that sit between us and sales that help us make sure we have the right input from sales as well, and making sure we're incorporating that into the product too.
I have a keen sense this audience has a collection of questions they're dying for me to ask. So I think the first one is, explain that transformation process. I guess it's certainly over a year now, where the blue links that worked for many, many years went away, and a new array of search responses were displayed. Some of them are more ads, and some of them are Google answering the questions themselves. Explain that transformation for this.
Yeah, I would say sort of philosophically, we look at it as consumer demands are changing, and the consumer is changing over time, and what they're looking for from us is changing. So we'll often talk about 10 blue links no longer is enough, that people in an app-centric world...
I thought it was 8. No, I guess 10. Okay.
10. But in an app-centric world, that people are looking for answers, they're looking for a complete solution. So that's part of what our transformation from 10 blue links to more answers was. And interestingly, if you listen to Ben Gomes now, who had search at Google, he's now talking about the next step beyond answers, which are journeys. And what he's referring to is not a travel journey, but he's referring to the fact that consumers come and interact with Google across sessions, and that they have interests that carry across sessions. And we at Google should do a better job of helping them pick up where they left off, taking the next step in that journey. And that actually applies very much to travel as well, which is multi-session in nature.
So I know you work in product and not other departments, but when you're on a stage like this and your employer is Google, you're going to get a lot of these kind of questions. So picking up on the 8 to 10 blue links that are no longer there after a consumer hits return, what do you say when critics say, yeah, but like now Google, you're answering the questions and you've just crushed a lot of businesses that used to answer those questions for a living?
Yeah. I guess what I typically say in that case is that what we're trying to do, again, is be relevant to the consumer. If we're not relevant, then they're going to go someplace else at the end of the day. So we need to continue to iterate, just like all of our partners iterate and innovate as well, too. When we do that, we think if we build a great flight search product or a great hotel search product, we're building more and more qualified leads through that, which is great for our partners, too, over time. It just may happen at a different stage in the funnel.
Yeah. And obviously, a lot of people, if they raised money and built this whole business, and all of a sudden one day the answers they used to answer are now being answered by Google, they probably wouldn't feel about it that way.
I think there's plenty of space out there. I don't think we're not all answering all questions for all people.
Yeah. So I was at a board meeting the other day, and I jotted this down. One of the people that was presenting, he said, SEO is pretty much dead. Because, well, at least in the travel space, he said, because Google doesn't really show any organic results anymore. Rather, they show their own results and their and ads or marketing paid responses. So do you think SEO is he right? Was it he? Yeah. No,
I don't think it's dead. I think there's plenty of room within organic search. You'd be surprised at actually how much traffic that we generate and deliver organically to customers today within our hotel product today. The vast majority of the clicks even in that product itself are organic as well too.
So since the quest for always giving consumers great answers, so how do you balance at Google that quest of providing good, organic, meaningful responses and supplier and partner needs that give you a lot of feedback? How do you do that?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think it's changed a lot. Frankly, in the last 20 years, or last 18 years or so since we launched AdWords, we've always been in this business of having something that's relevant to a consumer that they come for. We deliver good paid links that are good ROI to a partner. We're just doing that in a new environment, I would say, with more complete answers in this context. Yeah. But it is a balance at the end of the day. In a lot of my experience, more than a decade at Google, was building AdWords. So I definitely come with the partner bent on this, and it's fun to combine the consumer and the ad experience together. But I clearly understand that there's an ecosystem there that we have to have both to make it work.
Yeah.
Philip, we have a question from the audience.
Thanks. Just wondering if you can give a sense for, within the travel vertical for Google, what sort of query growth have you been seeing? And then, what is the growth also that you've been seeing in the number of qualified leads that you're delivering to your partners, and maybe a sense for what the trends underneath those growth rates are would be great. Thanks.
In terms of query growth overall, we're seeing slightly slower growth than we used to have on Google as a whole, but growing well still. In travel in particular, we're seeing in the vertical specific experience a good lead generation growth for our partners over the last year. Actually very healthy year-over-year growth within that context as well as a whole. So we think as we build richer experiences, we're creating something that's better and better from a consumer perspective, and that they will come back and they'll engage and we'll see query growth over time. That's part of the goal around building richer vertical experiences, is creating something that's useful to consumers that generates more queries over time.
So assistive, I'm not so sure I knew that word before I spoke to a lot of people at Google. Well, that's a big word at Google. Assistive, help the consumer, help, and then all of a sudden it gets creepy, right? At some point, like that's too much help, right? So how do you navigate being as assistive as possible, but not being creepy?
Well, I think, Larry used to say this too. We talked about personalization years ago, and he would say, people people are comfortable sharing data with you if they're getting high utility from it at the end of the day. And so usually our conversations in the company are around what's the utility exactly and what this feature delivers to a consumer. And if it's high utility, then they're more willing to share that data. I look at some of the stuff that we do in the trips context within travel as a whole too. And
do you ever get that wrong where you sincerely, the testing, you believe something's incredibly relevant, and then you get like test results or feedback and say, oops?
Yeah, we do user experience research where we show people things and they tell us, I'm not comfortable with that, so we do hear pieces of that. I would say, frankly, overall, we're pretty conservative as a company in pushing that line. In fact, we have a lot more discussions internally about there's more we could do here, and there's a lot more skepticism in the company as consumers ourselves saying, I'm not sure I want that. So we move pretty conservatively in this space, I would say.
Philip, we have another question from the audience.
All right, thank you. I'm wondering if you look at some of your biggest customers, Booking.com, have pulled back on their performance marketing spend over the past year, and it's sent ripples through the whole industry. Trivago, TripAdvisor has also pulled back. You're their biggest source of traffic. So how does it change how Google thinks about the world to see some of the largest customers pull back on performance spend and focus on brand and driving traffic to their own sites as a starting point in travel?
Well, I can't comment on particular partners. I don't think that would be fair of me to do in this context. But we work with all of the partners you suggest and others very closely on trying to make sure that we're generating more leads to them over time. There's a mix that they're balancing between AdWords, travel-related ads in particular, and in the vertical-specific ads around hotel ads. We think we're striking a good balance within that, and they're seeing good growth in that. But yeah, we have a lot of discussions with our partners about building query growth over time.
Probably referring to maybe going to more TV spend for brand building, taken away from performance.
Yeah.
So, Richard, in February this year, Charles Duhigg wrote a major piece in the New York Times Sunday magazine. I would imagine most people at Google remember. The title was "The Case Against Google. Critics Say the Search Engine is Squelching Competition Before It Begins." So what's it like working and like article like that comes out?
I think we don't pay a lot of attention to the various articles, to be honest. We have a bunch of people who are very focused on building great products or excited about building those products. We think we're making a good impact from a consumer perspective and adding value to our partners. There's a lot of articles that get written through the years that kind of go by.
Do you worry about squelching competition?
I don't think we're squelching competition, honestly. I think we're providing a great marketplace. We're trying to innovate for consumers. If we don't innovate for the consumers will speak themselves. They'll go elsewhere at the end of the day.
So there's this feature called Book on Google, or it's currently called Book on Google. A hotelier, an airline, and I guess even some intermediaries can live on Google, and the customer can actually book without leaving the Google platform, but they're definitely booking in the partner site.
Yep.
Is that a big popular thing, or why does Google do that?
We focus on it first and foremost because we think it drives conversion rate for a partner. Partners don't need to engage in if they don't want to. Our goal is really to make a better consumer experience by making the booking transaction as simple as possible. I think there's been some confusion about the product. There's been some confusion about the name, but it's really, you could call it facilitated booking in many senses.
It could have a better name?
It could have a better name. We may work on that name.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's about ultimately getting that consumer through that process more quickly. The merchant of record is the partner, it's not us. When you come to the booking page, the branding on that page is the partner branding, and then the email and the customer support are being generated by the partner as well.
And then this happens all the time. We've both been in the space. The more Google helps users at every stage of their travel planning, the more Google looks like an OTA. What say you about that?
I say that we're focused again on driving value. We're not about trying to create a customer engagement in the OTA space the way the OTAs are. We're engaged in trying to deliver the customer to the OTA at the end of the day. And if we do a good job of piecing together the travel pieces together, we think we've served customer needs better. We maintain relevancy to the consumer at the end of the day. Yeah. If we're relevant, then we're a good marketing and distribution channel for our partners. If we're not relevant, we're not.
It'll be interesting because booking for other search and meta search players, hasn't always worked as planned. So maybe next year we'll revisit that. So, true or false? Voice is the next big browser.
Voice is impressive in terms of growth overall, for sure. We're seeing really great engagement. Over 50% of our traffic is on mobile today. 20% of that is voice and growing rapidly. And in emerging markets, it's growing even more rapidly. We're finding in markets where people have skipped and gone straight to mobile, and also in markets where literacy rates may be lower, that people are going straight to voice. And so we're seeing very substantial growth rates in those markets.
In the early internet days, when both of us had hair, I got abused suggesting people would book travel online. Yeah. And they wouldn't do this, and with great confidence, right? And so now we're hearing this, but they're not going to book a hotel room with their voice.
Well, it is beginning to happen. I should clarify a little bit. A lot of people think about voice and they think about the home device that we have in our kitchen or living room that Google produces.
Google Assistant lives lots of places.
The Assistant lives everywhere. We have 500 million devices now that are Assistant enabled. And in travel in particular, we're very focused on the phone, just because we think having the screen is an important piece of the information flow that's coming back to the consumer. In fact, mentioned two things that we're doing in the Assistant within our travel team in particular, pre-announced that are coming out later this month. One is that we are doing hotel booking on the Assistant in particular. You can think of an example of traveling to a location. Actually, there's a screenshot here of I was going to go to the Gem Hotel in New York, ask about that hotel. It would ask me what date I want to stay there, reply with the date, then come back with the booking options I want in particular, show me the terms and conditions of that, and just say, yes, please book that for me. So that's happening later this month. We've got partners, suppliers such as Choice participating in that, intermediaries such as Priceline, and integration partners like TravelClick participating in that as well.
I think people forget in the old days, all the interaction was voice, and then we had to learn this typing thing. Yep. So I'm surprised how much pushback there is going back to the natural voice, but we'll see. Yeah. Talk about, how do you distinguish search and meta search, especially with the latest major upgrades of hotel search at Google and Google Flight Search? Is it search or meta search, or it doesn't matter?
I would look at our products as ultimately meta search in the sense of, and for us, it's about, again, a more complete answer for the consumer. In most of these cases, you're interested in looking at a range of options, and that's what we're trying to do, is present to a user.
And what was wrong with hotel search that the team believed it needed such an overhaul?
I think a couple of things that we were trying to focus on more than anything there. One is we really didn't think that we actually were doing a great job of showing comprehensiveness to the user. And this is part of our back-end overhaul as well now, so we're able to show a user on a map all the choices in a market. We've revamped in terms of the content that we're offering too, so we have a very rich photo immersion experience, deep reviews in the product as well too, and frankly, just a better look and feel across the product too. It feels better to use the product now.
And final question, do you see flight search getting as big, say, in Europe as it is in the United States?
Oh, flight search is quite big in Europe for us now as well too, so it's growing quite rapidly. We're happy with the engagement we have there with consumers on it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Holden, thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who says being cheap is a good thing? We do. Cheapaware.com. There's nothing wrong with being cheap, with having fun, with saving money. So go ahead. Be smart. Be cool. Be cheap. Just download, click, or call and save on the best flights, hotels, cars, and more.
Cheapaware.com.
Go ahead. Be cheap.
Say, Selena, do you know Travel Voice Japan? Travel Voice Japan? Yes, I know, Naomi. It's the largest digital travel trade news in Japan, and it has some 500,000 subscribers a month. That's amazing. But isn't it a fake news? No, it's not. How do you know it? Because President Trump doesn't pick it as fake news media.